So, when did you first become aware of Comme?
I remember it was actually in the Face magazine in the mid-80s, maybe 84, 85. And there was an article about Rei, which I think may have been done by Ronnie Newhouse. But it was looking at her work to that day, something like 3 years' work. But I remember the first piece that I remember being most taken with was the lace sweater, which of course the lace sweater, the holy sweater. To me, it was sort of like an advancement of Vivian's work at that time, but done in a very sort of to me, it seemed to have come out of the punk spirit and the punk sense of the punk aesthetic, but it had such sort of a truthfulness to it and an honesty to it that so I was a fan after that. Really, the lace sweater was what got me.
And do you remember like the first piece that you actually saw, touched?
Do you know, this sounds extraordinary, but it was actually the Lumps and Bumps collection.
Oh no,
really? And it was in Browns, I think, and people were talking about it because Rei had actually sent, or the company had actually sent a sort of manifesto, I suppose, to all of the stores explaining how to wear it. And many people would take the paddings out and just wear them as a dress. And that was I was really surprised actually by the fabric, because it was a nylon. And going back into her career, she was one of the first designers to elevate materials like nylon and polyester to sort of high fashion. But I remember being struck by I was expecting something a little bit more refined, to be honest, in terms of the construction. But it didn't really matter because it was about an idea. So the materials were almost irrelevant. It was really about the idea and the concept. So that's the first piece I remember touching.
God, because it's a. Did you feel like I know how I felt when I saw that show. It was like I felt like disease, and everybody was cheering and really excited, and me, I felt like some kind of, that disease when you have all those lumps all over your face and body. Did you have any of that impact? Or?
Do you know, it was sort of like it was something I'd never seen before. And I honestly didn't know what to make of it. I remember reading the reviews the next day, which was, hunchbacks, and I think Susie wrote about tumours. And I didn't really think about that at the time. I thought there was otherworldly. I didn't relate it to sort of like deformity, which was a completely understandable response to it. This sort of monstrous silhouette. I just thought it was really brave. I remember I did not know what to make of it. Apart from the fact that I felt, oddly enough, I did think about pregnant women actually, because there was a strange. I loved the collections, which was the gingham. So
exactly.
It was this strange sort of. It was cute, but also grotesque, beautiful, but also ugly. So I did think there's a tension going on, because you had these sort of like very sort of extraordinary silhouettes, monstrous if you want to call it, but they were done in gingham. So there was like a domesticity to them at the same time. So to me, it was about, yes, it may be about deformity, but it's also about the idea of the pregnant form, Venus de Milo. So all these references came rushing to my head, and I think that was also when I began to think, when it comes to Rei, the idea of interpretation, or linear interpretation, just has to go out the window. You have to sort of occupy the space where you free yourself from those references to see what's actually happening. And in actual fact, I think it was just an experiment in silhouette. It was an experiment in the dress and the body, fusing the dress and the body as one. And the idea of this unified silhouette. So sometimes it's as simple as that with Rei. I think that there's so much mythology and mystery around her because she doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
So you're left to fill in the gaps, which I love doing. What's that game where you say you have there's a game as a kid and you have one word and two words missing and
Mad Libs.
I love those.
Mad
Libs. I love them. I think to me that's what Rei's work is like. You just fill in these gaps, and like a title she gives, which I early work was very prosaic. You know, there were titles like bias cutting or patchwork or silk jersey, like very descriptive, and then they slowly became more poetic and more cryptic. And it's what I was saying this morning, that they're like red herrings, like completely designed to like throw you off the mark and sort of like confuse and befuddle you. But yeah, so that was my reaction to Body Meets Dress.
So how was it going on in the same theme of like, we knowing how she's not very verbal? How was it communicating with her? How did you first meet her?
I only met her probably about a year ago. So just before we decided to collaborate on the exhibition together. And it's been challenging, because not because she doesn't really communicate. It's more the fact that we approach things so differently. She doesn't want to define herself. She doesn't want her work to be interpreted or explained. As a curator, that's sort of your job. It's about interpretation. It's about explanation. It's about providing a framework for understanding. So we're always at odds with each other. We never could agree on an approach. The only time that I once was thinking about doing an exhibition that was based around Susan Sontag. Susan Sontag wrote this essay in 1966 called Against Interpretation. And I sort of felt it was opposite for Rei. What Susan was basically saying was that critics, the intellect is a critic's revenge on art. Meaning the fact that critics imbue art with so much meaning that they empty it of emotional feeling and subjectivity, which I think that's Rei's position. I think Rei wants people to experience her work but not to interpret it. So she wants people to have this very visceral response to her work, which we do. So I nearly went down that path when I first began doing this show, thinking, well, maybe Susan could be the ghost narrator of the exhibition, and it's all about this idea of experience and not interpretation, and approaching these objects and this work through emotion. But I thought, I don't quite believe that. I don't think intellect and emotion are mutually exclusive. I think you can have an intellectual response and an emotional response, and they don't. One's not better than the other, and they can inform each other. Sometimes, an intellectual response is your first response to something. Sometimes it's emotional, but they don't. So that's the reason why I didn't go down that path. I love that. I wish I had in a way. I think it would have been much easier for me to have done a show like that, because it would have been abstract. But I didn't think it was fair on the visitors to the show. But I think just need a framework to enter into the world of Rei, and they can reject or embrace it. But it's just an interpretation, not the grand interpretation. It's just one interpretation. So, but Rei loved that. Rei loved the idea of Sontag against interpretation. But I felt as if I felt very strongly that she occupied the space which was a space of creativity and creative freedom that existed in the shadows of things. So I felt that was very much where she operates. So I sort of went down that path after a while.
So this process, it started how long ago, and what was kind of just 1 year?
Just 1 year. Adrian came to me, the museum, and asked if we were interested in an exhibition with Rei. That would just be her last 6 collections, from spring 2014 to the date. And so, and we could do that, but more of a smaller show, as a fall exhibition. So I said, there could be. We could posit it as being an artist's latest work, and we were going to install it in the Met Broyer. And Rei saw the Met Broyer, didn't love the building, but felt as if the space it was too designed, that we weren't able to work on a new concept in a space that was really Marcel Breuer's idea. So that I sort of understood that. I think that maybe there was just not enough tension between the clothes and the building, that we weren't able to create something that was new in that space. So that I completely understood. And then luckily a space came up in the main building in the Met, where McQueen was, when we did the McQueen show, which is basically just a tabula rasa. It's just an empty box, a white box that you can actually install anything. And I think she liked the idea of creating something that just landed in the Met. You know, it was this amazing Belle Epoque building, and something just lands in this world of Comme des Garçons lands in this building. And I think it wouldn't have had a bigger impact if it was in the Marcel Breuer building, because it's too modernist. There's two modernists competing with each other. Whereas with this one, you've got the idea of tradition and modernity, and I think that people seem to forget. I think Rei has a deep respect for tradition and a deep respect for history. She's also an avant-garde modernist, but she's also a traditionalist, and I think that that sometimes, and she has a respect for it. So I think that's like the idea. It's like the idea of having this sort of like planets just land. So yeah.
So how are we going to experience it? Like, take me through, like, if we're walking through it.
It was amazing. When we were working on the project together, we actually, Rei actually created a life-size model of the space in Tokyo. She found a building that was the exact same proportions as the gallery at the museum. And up to that point, it was always, it was always abstract to me. It was, we spoke a lot about the space and about notions of tangibility and intangibility. It was very much on the level of the abstract. Mm-hmm. And we saw models, but I still couldn't experience it. Seeing a model, I'm not able to sort of see something at 2D, even a small model, and see how you can experience it. So it was there was a life-size model in Tokyo, and it was extraordinary because you walk in.
Life-size.
And it's completely life-size, and it was it was like going into a church, like a Taro Ando church, because it was about the it's hard to talk about it without giving too much away, but it's a series of these abstract architectural structures that house these objects. Some are incredibly personal, some are grander. Because when we were talking, we both wanted was this voyage. So you'd experience this exhibitionist and exploration. You might get lost, you might get diverted. So it didn't really matter that there was no linear. There is a narrative you can follow if you want, but it doesn't matter if you don't follow that. And you actually want people to get lost. But I couldn't work out how that could be possible. Then I saw life size, and it is possible. You can walk through and come across things in this really unexpected way, and it's surprising, it's confusing as well. But there's a sort of grandiosity to the structures, but also a deep humility to them. So they're incredibly present, but also absent at the same time. So it's there's all these strange feelings that you feel when you go through, and suddenly I thought, I can see everything now, because it was important for Rei that she couldn't think of working with an architect who didn't have that unified idea. She couldn't see her clothes existing in another space where she didn't have a hand in designing. So, and she was very heavily involved with the design of the exhibition, not with the curation, but with the design. So it is going to be this voyage and this sort of poetic exploration of her work. That's what I think. Hopefully, that's what I hope.
Well, I'm sure. I have no doubt. If you remember I guess in your research, because you started the first pieces of hers that you became familiar with the Hump collection, but through if you did a timeline, which were the collections or the shows or the actual pieces that stand out the most in your mind?
Oh my gosh. Her early collections, I think her early 80s collections were just absolutely groundbreaking. Not just the colour, she actually used more colour than just black. It was monochromatic. It wasn't just black, but that's what we remember. And the patterns were extraordinary. So, to me, this clothing that at a time when it was Mugler, Montana, Lacroix, and then you had this designer creating these clothes that just seemed completely new and were based on different sort of Eastern sort of cutting techniques. So I find those are really important. And then in the mid-90s, I think it was, she did a series of collections that were called Fusion and the Unfinished. And I think that's when she began to work with notions of and that's when I began to think, up to that point I always thought she was a postmodernist, and I saw those collections, I thought, what she's doing is exposing the mechanics of clothing, saying this is clothing, as opposed to its deconstruction. So that was a change to me. And so Clustering Beauty was one collection I remember, which was layers and layers and layers of unfinished organza. It looked like typography. It looked very much like typography on the body. But this group of collections in the mid-90s I found really interesting. And obviously the collection she dislikes the most is the Broken Bride. And actually there's two, Broken Bride and White Drama, because she feels as if they are too literal and that people understood them too easily.
Really, they were beautiful.
They're beautiful. White Drama in particular I thought was exquisite. But for her, she felt as if it was too easily understood and too celebrated. People loved that on a global level, and she didn't like the fact that it was celebrated so consistently. And obviously, Lumps and Bumps was absolutely extraordinary and marked another sort of like departure in a way in her career. The 2D collection we saw today. So a lot of the collections that are based on patterns and radical patterns and radical distortions of the body, the ones I seem to really gravitate towards.
So if you were to say what do you consider Rei's contribution has been to fashion and how we perceive fashion and how we, not only in the construction but also in the way she presents it?
I think oh my gosh, there's so many things. I think that obviously her constant search for originality, the fact that she almost obliterates her past every collection to create something new. So that's inspirational, and I think we should aspire to that. The idea of looking at just pure creativity, and if one can weave in notions of wearability and functionality within that's one thing. Or it could exist as pure abstraction. But I do think that idea of constantly searching for something that is new, original, and just a pure expression of creativity is inspirational. Beyond that, I think that one of her major contributions is how she's never divorced her fashions from her other commercial enterprises. So for her direct mails, her stores are equally as valid as a creative expression as her clothing, and she's managed to do that within the fashion system. So it's again going back to the fact that she's so respectful of tradition and history. She's never once wanted to break down the fashion system. She accepts the fashion system on its terms, and within that she's carved her own path. But I think that's a paradigm. I think the model she's created for a business is paradigm shifting.
Because she was the first one to do those kind of garage pop-up stores.
Yes, exactly. The guerrilla
Guerrilla,
stores. Exactly.
yeah, not garage.
There
was
stores.
that awful perfume, Garage.
I think I remember that garage perfume.
I remember putting the invitation in my bag. They did a launch at Colette, and my whole bag was smelling of this Garage.
It's that thing when you just where you got on an aeroplane, like a 12-hour flight, and you spray something new, and suddenly you smell it the entire time.
It's
You want to
horrible.
chop off your arm.
It's horrible because I went to that lunch and Adrian said, because I was always wearing Avignon, and I said, Garage and dry cleaner or whatever those, I don't remember. He goes, you should try them. It's like, no, I said, no, I like Avignon. I like the serenity, feeling like you're in a church,
So nice.
But that, yeah. So, were there any pieces in the permanent collection at the Met before this?
We have quite a good collection. They're not in the exhibition because we have a lighting system that's all fluorescent tubes, really, really, really bright. So we weren't able to put any museum objects in the space, and because all of the garments belong to Rei, we were able to approve that lighting system. But we've got Lumps and Bumps. We don't have the lace sweater, I wish we did. But we've been collecting Rei. Richard Martin did when he was there.
Right.
Harold did, and myself. So we have a really good collection of Rei. And over the years, Rei's probably had her own retrospective anyway, because she's sort of, in terms of the accumulation of the works that we've shown of Rei over the years amounts to like a retrospective. But yeah, she's somebody we've always been interested in, and we've always collected and always shown in our exhibitions.
So the actual original idea, which he said was just covering X amount of collections, in the end,
Yeah.
it
No,
stuck to that, or it changed?
No, so initially, when it became a bigger show, when we finally agreed on a space at the Met, a space in Met, it was on the condition that it was a much expanded exhibition. We couldn't just do the last 6 collections there. And slowly it grew and grew and grew and grew. I mean, it's so funny because Ray, I interviewed her for the book, and I said,
How did that go?
it was the first thing she said when I sat down was, "I hate interviews," and it went on from there. No, but it was interesting because the first thing she said was, "I don't want a retrospective," and we've turned it into one. And it is not. I mean, there's many more. There's about 150 pieces, so it's a big exhibition. But it's not a retrospective. It's an essay on her work. So I think there'll be many, many, many more exhibitions on Ray after this, and there'll be more, hopefully more of a sort of definitive exhibition, which this really isn't. It's not organised chronology. It's thematic. We have a lot of collections, but there's some that are missing. So the biggest challenge, I think, was just trying to convince Ray of some pieces that she really did not want to include in the show.
Was the bridal bit in, or
no?
not?
She hated that, but she finally agreed to that, and finally agreed to white drama. She didn't agree with the collection, which was called Curiosity, which was the collection with the hands.
Oh, right.
That one,
hands and lips too.
Yeah.
Right.
She didn't really like. She didn't like
that.
That
wasn't
one.
my favorite.
You didn't like it either. Yeah, no.
I didn't think it was her best.
That one wasn't good for her. But on the whole, she was, really probably 85% of what I asked for, I got. I think the other 15 was a negotiation, which is, for working with a living artist, is actually extraordinary.
And I guess the final question: is it going to travel anywhere?
No, not at the moment. There's no plan. It may do.
I'm sure
because
it's
McQueen
going
was
to
never going to
travel.
travel, and then it did.
And now they built a space that's the exact size, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh no, but that was a warehouse.
A warehouse.
That was a warehouse in Tokyo. But I don't know. Maybe somewhere in Tokyo might be interesting. I mean, it's an extra.
Probably other places too, like De Young and all
Yeah.
those places.
I think she doesn't seem to be very interested in that side of it.
Really?
She wants it to be like a one-off
Really?
exhibition that just has its own life, and then it's like the idea she wants it to be ephemeral and obsolescent. So as soon as it's born, it goes away.
Wow. So May 4th to
May 4th,
To September 4th.
May 4th to September 4th. So Labor Day, after Labor Day.
great. Is there anything you want to say I didn't ask you?
No, it's perfect.
Thank you.